Empowered to Live. It says my mic was still muted for you guys. So, welcome to another episode of Empowered to Live. I am your host, Andrea Rose Butler of Becoming Women's Network. And this is the podcast where faith meets purpose and purpose fuels freedom. And today we are starting a new series entitled Faith in Action. Faith in Action. And so, this series about moving beyond what we say we believe into how we live it, especially when life has been painful, confusing, or even unexpected. And I can say for myself, especially, I guess in this past 2 years, almost 2 years of just having this pain issue going on, sciatic nerve acting up, and pain. I was at the doctor again today, and he was just like, I can see the pain in your eyes. And I was like, look, I it's been keeping me up, and I've been me and God have been having a whole bunch of come to Jesus moments with prayer and tears and all the things, and I'm like, and still feeling like God, even in this, I am grateful that I can feel pain because it could be worse. I could be feeling nothing, or be on the other side of the dirt. And so I praise God even through the pain that I'm still here. My daughter and I even had a conversation where we stopped at the pharmacy to pick up a prescription, and she was just like, this is like Christianity, like our faith and light and this temporary pain for eternal glory. And I was like, oh, she quoted one of my favorite scriptures, that this present suffering is not worthy to be compared to the glory that we shall receive when we see him. And there's a day coming when we will see him. In Bible study, we've been talking about the end times and what that means when the Lord's coming back for his church, the rapture, the tribulation, all those things that people don't like to read. And our pastor actually taught yesterday, and she was talking about, this is hope for the believers, for us to know that there is a hope, that this world that we have right now, everything that we're seeing, is not permanent. And this is not a permanent home. It's appointed unto man once to die, and then so it's a temporary, and so like if you're like me, you've been going through some painful series. Maybe your life has been sort of like mine, with um, child abuse, domestic violence, sexual assault, breast cancer, homelessness, the whole gambit of things, that my life has been painful. It's been confusing because I'm like, God, I'm serving you, and all these things are happening to me. Like, what in the world, God? What like, you got a vendetta against me? What is going on? And it always brings me back to, one of my favorite scriptures that I tell y'all about all the time. This is Romans 8:28, where he talks about, and we know that in all things, God worked it together for our good. And, I've said that God knits it together for our good. So that tapestry, and on the underside that we see, the messy, the confusing parts, the brokenness, the betrayals, the sicknesses, the divorce, the loss of loved ones, all of those things. Those are the messy pieces that we see. But the tapestry that God presents to the world of Him working it together is a beautiful framework. The world sees the beauty of it, and we see the messy parts. But he's saying that in all of these things that he's working it together for our good. So he's knitting it together for our good and for his glory. And sometimes, we're like, God, where were you in all of this? I've asked this question, did it have to hurt so much? Like, and I saw a meme, it was this past week. And it's one of the things I never say to anyone when they're going through a difficult season is to say that God gives suffering or pain or whatever to his strongest soldiers. And in the meme, that person said this to someone else, and the person that was being censored, she's like, "When did I sign up for the war?" Because I don't remember signing up for the war. And and I know, we saying I'm on the battlefield for the Lord, and I'm fighting for my life, and I'm not going to come off the battlefield. I'm going to stay here until I die. But as a former soldier, battlefields are not pretty, and people are shooting at you, bombs are going off, and wounds happen on battlefields. And so even though we may say, when I became a Christian, my life is supposed to be, wonderful, and it's supposed to be beautiful, and there's supposed to be no pain and no suffering and none of those things. And that is the promised hope. But in this life that we live, and and not to say, to disparage or to not leave you hopeless, but we're going to have situations that are painful, that are confusing, that we don't understand the why we had to go through all of those things. And I'm like, God, you could have stopped it at any time. Me and him have had that conversation before. God, you could have stopped this. What's wrong with you? You're supposed to be loving me. What? You're just supposed to be a good father? And, but even good fathers, there are things that happen to their children even when the father is good, because we live in a sinful world. We live in a world where people make poor choices. We live in a world where evil is present. We live in a world where, people do things for their own selfish ambitions. And unfortunately, people get hurt in the midst of all of that. Good people, because there are people who are selfish, because the enemy is still in charge of this world, and he has not left yet. He is leaving. And one of the scriptures in Revelation 21, I think it is, that says that he is raging right now because he knows that his time is short. And that's our hope, that he's raging because he knows stuff is happening, because he knows his time is at an end. And so we just need to recognize in those moments when, when stuff is happening, God's presence is there. He's subtle. He said he will never leave you, he'll not forsake you. And it can give you strength in your faith and trust in his oversight, that if that's you, God is working. He is working. He's there. And he's working into all things. And so one of the hardest truths to accept in our Christian faith journey is that pain and purpose often go hand in hand. Yeah, we don't like that. I don't like that. So pain does not mean you miss God, because I know sometimes we figure that, and I've heard people say that when you're going through, and we see this in even the Old Testament, Job was going through his season. His children were died. He lost everything that he had. Here he's bankrupt. He's sick in his body, and his friends come by and like, what did you do wrong? What God is punishing you for? What did you do? And there's nothing that sometimes that we have done anything. We didn't miss God, we didn't mess up, but the enemy knows that he's trying to come. And I know I've shared this before, that the enemy knows, for me, my faith is strong, and he's always going to try and hit my body. He's always, 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 he's hitting my body constantly, you know. But and so he knows this is where he comes in, and we can get into this place and say, I missed you, God, or I'm and disqualified because I'm experiencing pain. People will say that too. Maybe your faith's not strong enough. That's why you're experiencing your pain. Maybe you didn't pray enough. You didn't fast enough. You didn't read enough scripture. You can do all these different things, and we put that burden. People put it on us, but sometimes we put that burden on ourselves as well by saying maybe my faith isn't strong enough, and so therefore I'm disqualified. Maybe you messed up 20 years ago and made a poor choice, and now you feel like this is my pain, is my consequence. And yes, when we sin, there's consequences to our sin, but God is still loving, and God is still merciful. But again, we live in a sinful, fallen world that wants you to fall away. He wants you to get discouraged. Just like his tactics are the same, just like he said to Job, to God about Job. He said, he's just praising you and worshiping you because you got a hedge of protection around him and you're doing good things for him. Remove it So, and you'll see that what he's going to do. And so pain doesn't mean that your faith failed. You could be in a series of testing, and sometimes you're like, God, am I sitting the SAT here? Because this is long. We've been going on for a long time. Is it time yet? Have you called time yet? I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready for this test to be done. Oh my God's face. And so often pain is a place where God begins his deeper work. When Pastor talked about a couple of weeks ago about rooted, that when drought, when disaster comes, are your roots deep? Are your roots deep? And so, like when a tree is facing drought, when when the weather is harsh, what a tree does, it digs deeper and looking for water, and it will go down deeper and anchor itself even the more, and to look for water. And so it goes down and down and down until it finds it, and the tree becomes stronger because of the fact that it had to look for water. And for us, that water we know is Jesus. We seek in that water. We're going to look for that water. We're going to find ourselves in that water. We're going to go deeper looking for that water. We need that water. And so when you're in this space, because I was telling you these past 2 weeks, I've been waking up 2 o'clock in the morning and haven't been able to go back to sleep because the pain has been so bad. I've just been awake. And like I said, I was a doctor today, and I was like, nothing is working. Like even now, I'm looking joyful, but I'm like, my back hurts, my leg hurts, all the things hurt. But I was like, but God, you are still good. And I was like, I'm going to do this today. And then I'm going to go lay down because it's been a day. But my faith is deep. I've been running this race. I've been on the battlefield for a long time. And so I know I've become seasoned that we can go through difficult season and still give God glory. And because you know that he's working it together for our good. And it's not about us. When you've been through stuff and you walked through it, I told you all about the story about the Becoming Women's Network, how it all got started was through a letter from a friend who wrote to me after I got out of my abusive marriage and was living in New Jersey. And she sent me this letter and had this scripture that basically says that once you have gone through all of this thing, the suffering that you've gone through, comfort, pull somebody else in, basically. I think it's 1 Corinthians 4:10. Um, and so that stayed with me. And so this is how, in the midst of my pain, so all the things that I've experienced, I pour out in this podcast. I pour out to the women here in Mexico. I have poured out over the years to the people that I work with, people that I come in contact with, people in my church, and I poured out from that space of recognizing that the things that I have suffered, the things that I have gone through, I can help somebody else with. I'm not going to be selfish with my pain. I'm not going to wallow in my pain. But as I pour it out and as I give it out, it brings healing to me. And that, some people, when I was in therapy, the therapist, she looked at me, she said, all the things that you have experienced, people who normally experience maybe one of these usually end up on drugs, they've already committed suicide, they're alcoholics, they suffer from depression, they've done this, da 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 da. And she was naming all the negative things that she said, but I don't see that in you. I see joy. And I was like, that is only God. Because at that moment in time, let me tell you about me. I was in a disassociative state, didn't even recognize all of those things. So a lot of stuff was going on, but God worked it together. And I don't know why somebody needed to hear. I don't know why I'm stuck in this spot, in this space of, when we go through things, again, it's not for us. And when we release it, when we let it go, we don't hold on to it. And so what you went through may not have been God's desire, but understanding that God's redemption is always his promise and can help you feel valued and hopeful on your journey. So it wasn't God's desire for us to go through this stuff. It's going to happen. He said it was going to happen because of sin in this world, but it's still not his plan. So what are some of the things that hinders us from turning our pain into purpose. So let's talk about that. So staying stuck in survival mode. And we just try to hold it together. That's all. I'm in pain. I'm trying to hold it together. And I told y'all many nights these past 2 weeks, I'm just trying to hold it together. And I just walking around my room as I could. And I'm just like, God, I'm giving you praise through this. I don't know why it's happening, God. I hurt. I can't sleep. And I looked up, what kind of doctors am I supposed to be seeing to treat all of this stuff? And it was like an orthopedic surgeon, a physiotherapist, and a psychiatrist. And I was like, psychiatrist for what? And when pain sometimes gets to that point where, I am not catching sleep as I can, an hour here, 20 minutes here, like you get tired, fatigue, all of these things wear on us because we stay into that space of, I'm just trying to get through the day. I got homework and I'm like, Lord, help me. I got homework to do. I'm taking 2 separate courses here. I'm in a bachelor's and a master's degree program, and I got homework to do in both of these classes, and I'm hurting. And what am I supposed to do? I'm not going to quit because I'm too close to the end. And I can't give up now. And so, but I was in survival mode and I recognized that. And so when you're in survival mode, it's hard to imagine that any good thing coming from the pain, and you're just trying to breathe. You're just like, God, let me make it through the day. Let me just get up today. Let me just walk. Let me put one foot in front of the other. Let me brush my teeth. Let me wash my face. We're in survival mode. And so when you stay there, it's hard for you to build when you can't even breathe. Believing your pain disqualifies you. Again, sometimes, maybe through our own poor choices or the choices of someone else, we have been injured emotionally, physically, spiritually. I did a thing about church hurt a while back. And so when we are in that space, also, we believe that our story makes us unfit for purpose, that we're too broken, that we're too messy, that we're too complicated. God blows all of that. That's the reason he came. He came for all of that. He came for your mess. He came for the broken. He said in Luke, he said, when he was quoting the Old Testament, and he says, I've come to find the brokenhearted, and to set free those that are oppressed, and to preach the acceptable year of the Lord. So God, he's coming for you in your broken places, in your messy spaces, in your complication. People say you're too much. That doesn't disqualify you from God using you. To read through the scriptures and look and see of who he used. Peter, who cussed and tried to cut off the ear of the man. We have David committed adultery and then had a man killed. We had, father-in-law sleeping with his daughter-in-law and getting her pregnant, and they tried messy. You're messy and complicated. Yeah, God, it doesn't disqualify you from God's purpose. Rahab the harlot, great grandmother of Jesus, you are not disqualified just because you are in a space of pain, believing that it doesn't disqualify you. I'm avoiding pain altogether. We can say, hey, I'm just gonna. It didn't happen. None of this thing. We push it down. We try to ignore it. We rush past it. We spiritualize it. Christians are good for spiritualizing pain. We feel stuff and we are hurting, and we are like, I'm all good. I can't remember the artist that he has a song. Since one of the lyrics of one part of it says, I'm fine, but I'm not. I'm broken, and God knows it. But the only way to fix this is for us to be honest. But yet I still say I'm fine. Yes, I'm fine, and I know that I'm not. And so when we go through and we're like, fine. And in healing care, they said fine is feelings in need of expression. So when you are in that broken space, we need to come and give expression to the feelings that we have. So our feelings need to be expressed. Sometimes we need to scream it out. You scream it at the pillow, you scream it at the air. Have a what I call them, my venting buddies. I have a friend, we've been friends for almost 40 years. And, She don't have to say nothing. If she calls me, she ain't got to, she just needs to hear me to listen. She just needs me on the phone so she can say what she needs to say and she can vent. And when I come back and I check in, I put her on speaker, we check in and check back in, and I'm like, okay. And I'm, then she keeps going. And I call her and I'm just like, look, this is what's happening, da 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 da. We had to call the other day. I called her, I was like, oh, my friend, the pain is too much. It's too much. I can't do it. I feel like I'm losing my mind because I can't sleep. And so it's okay for us to be honest. We need those people in our lives, a trusted friend, a trusted partner, trusted pastor or leader in your church or on your job, whoever, you know, someone that will keep your confidence and will allow you to be able to get rid of some of that stuff that we don't avoid pain because just like physically, if you're in pain and you don't get the help and the relief that you need, pain gets worse because then we make accommodations for the pain, which causes other things to break. So, the doctor was talking to me when he was about walking, and he was just like, yeah, when you do this, yeah, because you have the pain here, so then you try to um, guard and protect the pain, then you cause this to happen, and now this is out of alignment. Now you have an additional pain, but you got to address the root cause of the pain first, and then you deal with the root cause of the pain, and then the outlying symptoms of the pain, because pain can radiate. And we know when we radiate pain, we radiate it onto other people. We say stuff and we do things even to ourselves. And so we allow God to, give it over to the pain, allow him to meet us in that space of pain and to be honest and not say, I'm fine. I'm fine. Doctor looked at me today and he said, I can see it in your eyes. And y'all can't see me right now, but I see my eyes fully. He was like, I can see in your eyes the pain that's there, and he was like, and I'm sorry. And I was like, I know, I understand. It's not your fault. It is what it is. And so you can still walk through those moments of letting someone in to your space of pain and exercise it because again, just like with like an injury, if we have a wound and we don't take care of it, it gets infected, and then the infection spreads, and it keeps spreading, and it affects other parts of our body. So not avoiding the pain that we feel, but allowing space for God in it, allowing space for people into that space to sit with you in that space, and not comparing your journey to somebody else. So just because somebody else looks like, I know I've talked about this so much on this podcast, that we can't compare our journey to somebody else. Everybody's running their own race, and somebody, may have experienced some of the things that I've experienced and dealt with it differently. Doesn't mean that your journey is not your journey. God has graced me to be able to walk through these things and to heal. There's some spaces still that are just still kind of touchy, still got some PTSD about some things, but we're still working through it. When we push through and we do it, and every time it happens and I feel that overwhelm, I'm like, God, here it is again. This space is not being healed. I gotta give it over to you because it's not healed yet. I'm not healing this area yet. Lord, help me in this. And it's okay for that. And so we can't compare and wonder, why others' lives seems to be going so much better than ours. We don't know what their experience is. They can be like me right now, in pain, but my face doesn't reflect the fact that I'm hurting. And so sometimes we look at somebody else's journey and they may be masking the pain that they're feeling, and we're looking at their mask and thinking that this is the reality, and it's not. So we can't compare our journey to somebody else because we don't know. We're looking over the fence, but we don't know. I think I shared before, I quote that I heard that you looking at somebody else's grass and, thinking, their grass is always green, and it's not real. It's astroturf. but you've been taking care of yours, and yours is the real deal. And it's messy sometimes, and you have to put the work in, and so you can't look over at somebody that's hiding by using what's not real and then compare your journey to theirs. So how can we overcome some of these things? What are some of the things that we can do to overcome? Again, invite God into the pain, not to believe it or to relive it, but to redeem it. He wants to come in. He said, that's my purpose. That's why he came. He said, I came to heal the sick. I came to set the oppressed free. I came to heal the brokenhearted. He came to bring that great exchange into our life. So healing begins when we allow God access to the places that we have protected. Ooh, when we don't, we got to let him in. We got to let people in and let people see. And I tell you, that was my biggest downfall, and I'm learning now to say things and to allow people in to the places that I had protected for so long, and allow God to now come in, and he has been coming in, and it's making my life a lot better, to be able to let go a lot of the things that that we hold on to. We were like, this is the shame, the pain, or whatever, and so we need to allow him into the spaces and places that we have protected. God cares. He loves you, and he will handle it with care. Tells us about casting all our cares upon him because he cares for us. He cares for you. He really does. And so he was just like, show me your wounds. We talked about this where I was maybe in Sunday school last week, or whatever. Jesus was like, he came in and he was just like, see my hands, I got scars. See my side, I got this wound here. And he opened himself up to show his scars. He didn't protect it. He was just like, see my hands, see my feet, see my side, see all the broken places. As I'm saying to him now, I'm like, God, see my back, this sciatic nerve that's right now, this compressed disc that's beating me down. Lord, you're able. And I was like, God, you raised Lazarus from the dead. I know you're able to do what you can do about this thing. I'm still believing. I'm still hoping. And so yeah, I'm letting you into this space where I'm just like, oh. But now I'm like, God, no, I need you to do something. Do something about it because I can't. Separate your pain from your identity. Ooh, that's a big one. I know that was a struggle for me. Separating my pain from my identity. What happened to us is not who we are. Let that sink in for a minute. What happened to you is not who you are. That's not your identity. That's not your purpose. It happened to you. We said that in trauma informed care. When I work for social services. One of the things we talk about trauma informed care, and we don't say what's wrong with you. What happened to you? Not there's nothing wrong with me. Something happened to me. And just like just like when you're triaging and something is sick, and we say, what happened? Where does it hurt? All of these, you ask those questions. Where does it hurt? What happened? What happened to you? What happened to you when you go to the hospital, the doctor, or whatever? And, they have those what happened questions. And they will say, what's wrong with you? What happened? When did it start? How did this happen? How did you break your arm? You know, what happened? Were you hit by a car? Where this happen? They don't go into what's wrong. They want to know what happened because that would determine the symptoms that you're experiencing, which is the what's wrong with you, but it's something happened to you first. And so your identity is not in, I was molested, I was abused, I have cancer. I mean, people don't even want to say that. I had cancer and the scars are there. You know, this happened to you. And that's not, it's like your work. You know, you work as a secretary, but you're not a secretary. It's not your identity. That's separate. That is separate. And so we separate those out. And so pain is something that we experience, and it's not your name. It's not. It's something we experience. We experience pain. You know, it's the feeling that we have. We experience that. You slam your hand in the door. You know, you drop something on your foot. You experience the pain, but that doesn't change who you are. It doesn't change your name. And don't become you don't become, I dropped the can on my foot. That's not your name. It's something that happened to you. It's an experience that you had. So allowing healing and purpose to coexist. They work together. And so you don't have to be fully healed to be used by God. So something may have happened to you and you are experiencing different things. But even in your unhealed state, I told you when I started out and God gave me the idea for this ministry and stuff, I was just on the heels of coming out of an abusive marriage. I wasn't healed. I didn't know what was going on. And we started out as El Shaddai Ministries, you know, the God who provides. And I think it is where my brain was. And it was El Shaddai Ministries. And then we kind of evolved a little bit. And then we become a woman's network. But the space between those was like years. And even to the space where I am right now was like years. And I think and as I was doing this, as I was writing and ministering to women and having, conferences and workshops and all these different things and prayer in my home and all the things and I was still broken, but God's purpose was still at work. Even when I was fearful about doing this podcast, and I shared in our Visionary Voices last week, thank you all for those who watched, that we can still, with fear, still walk in purpose. Fear doesn't exclude you from it. Pain doesn't exclude you from this. And so when they come together, they work together because as God is developing and healing you, and you become stronger. This is like an athlete in training. You're a purposeful person at work. God is at work becoming Women's Network. So we are becoming the women and the people. And it says women, but it's primarily my audience. But the fellows that follow me and the fellows that are part of this, it doesn't exclude you or preclude you from the word. It's still the same. The work is still the same. You still have purpose as well. But we are becoming the people who God called us to be. And we're becoming out of the pain that we experience, and we're figuring out through God how He can use it together for good. What lesson have you learned that you can use to help somebody even in this moment while you still feel broken, while the pain is still there? What hope do you have to offer? Do you have a widow's mite that you can give? Can you be an encourager? Can you open a door? Can you smile at someone even in the midst of pain? Can you still give hope? Because we have it, just because our cups crack doesn't mean hope is not coming out of our, we still hold hope inside of us that we can still give to others. It's still there. We're still important. We still have something worthwhile to give. So we're going to trust God's timing and take steps towards faith. Requires action. Again, we can still give, we can still love, we can still share, we can still encourage, we can still smile. We can still do a lot of things and feel confident and motivated as we are growing, because we grow. Faith in action. James says faith without works is dead. So we have to put in the work of faith. It's action, faith in action. We're talking about action. We're moving, we're doing stuff. We're not being stuck. We're moving forward. So we're growing. So purpose doesn't emerge overnight. And sometimes it doesn't come, clarity comes only after compassion. And we gotta be compassionate for ourselves. I think I'm on social media. I see a lot of stuff. And I don't know if you have seen these, and it's a bird and a mushroom. And they're talking. And he says, if your friend messed up, what do you say to them? And he was just like, oh, it's okay that you messed up. Just try again. We all make mistakes. And he says, then you mess up. What do you say to yourself? And he goes, you're a horrible person. You're a failure. And this is what we do. We have compassion for somebody else. We don't have compassion for ourselves. We'll beat ourselves up. We'll throw ourselves under the bus, back the bus up, run ourselves over. But then we give grace to somebody else in the same space that do the same thing. And I'm saying to you, give yourself grace, give yourself compassion in your pain, that yes, whatever it is, God is working it together for good. So we challenge time, challenge time. So I want you to take one intentional step this week and choose a moment of pain from your past and pray this simple prayer. We're going to pray about it. So, God, show me where you were with me and what you want to redeem from this. So, what does God want to redeem from your pain? He said He would. He turned your mourning into dancing, so taking beauty for ashes. So, when you look at the pain, the thing that you're guarding the most, that you're holding on to, that you like, what is the shame or whatever it is, and you've been holding on. Nobody can know about this. It's the thing that wakes you up at night, and you think about it. You think about this pain, and you're like, I wish this didn't happen to me, and I wish this, and I wish that, and I whatever, and you're still holding and harboring that pain, and you know it's infected, but you refuse to go to the doctor and allow him to take a look at that. That's the thing that you need to break out and say, okay, God, here is this wound. I don't know. I've held it so long. I know it needs to be healed. I don't know how to heal it. I don't know what to do about it. Like I said, for me, this pain, this past almost 2 weeks, it's been 2 weeks, and this is my second time to the doctor. The first time I went to the ER. The second time I went to the orthopedic doctor that I saw before, and I'm like, okay, I am in pain, and I have tried. This is all the things that I have tried, and none of it's working. Even the prescription I got before was a joke. And I've been taking all the stuff, and I'm trying not to overdose on over-the-counter medicine and the stuff that they gave me. And I've tried heating pads and cold part compress, and I've done the rubs, and I've done this, and I've done that, and I've done this, and the other, and the other, and the other. Nothing is working. So help me. I'm bringing this pain to you. And so that's what we're going to do this week. We're going to bring that pain out. We're going to take it out. We're going to stop. We're going to unguard it, and we're going to show it. And we're going to show the pain. We're going to show where that spot is. Everyone was joking. My mom had surgery back in November, and he was like, "Oh, your scar looks really good." And she was like, "I wish it would go away." And I said, "No, your scar showed that you survived. What? The pain that you had experienced, and this new scar says that you survived this pain that you had." And he was like, "It's good. It's not going to go away." And I was like, "This is your thing that says that you survived." And we have those scars. And I did an episode that a while back on that. And so we can know and recognize that our pain, God wants to redeem it. He wants to use it. And so for my writers, or even if you're not writing, I think this would be a good exercise for everyone. So take time this week to reflect on what pain has shaped you the most. And I know for me, what happened, abuse shaped me, and it caused me to be more compassionate. Whether it was the physical abuse, the sexual abuse, it shaped who I was, who I am. And so it gives me compassion for people. I recognize pain in others. And then I recognize that in that broken space, that God was able to still use me. And when I will let go of the shame, and I be stop guarding the shame, because that's what people wanted me to feel. Is what the enemy held over me. What if people find out that this happened to you? They gonna look at you differently. And so when we pull off the curtains and we expose it, and we said, this is what happened, and this is what brought me through it, and now I'm here for you, as the Becoming Women's Network, as Andrea Rose Butler, in all my brokenness, I'm still a vessel that God can use. Because one of the quotes that God gave me, that even a cracked cup can still hold water and can still relieve thirst. So even when we feel, we're cracked, we're broken in all of these spaces and places, just like my mom's scar and the scars that I have, it shows that I survived. And the same thing with you. You survived. So what is that um, pain that shaped you the most? And how has God already met you in that season? Even subtly, you didn't even know that He was there, but He was subtle in showing up, and you didn't even recognize that He did it. When you look back over your life and you think about those spaces and times where things happen, and you're like, wow, God, I didn't even see you there, but He was there. And what strength have you gained that you didn't have before? Because sometimes we gain strength. We know we get stronger. Matt DC is a song that said, "What doesn't kill you make you stronger." And that's one of the things I didn't subscribe to, but it's true. You know, and so when we look at how do we grow from the things that we experience, Scripture says that Jesus learned obedience through the things that He suffered. And the same with us, as the things that we suffer, we learn obedience, we learn how to grow, we learn compassion, we learn to love more. We learn that we're stronger than we thought we were. We recognize that our roots went deep when tragedy or trauma happens, and we recognize that and we can grow from that. And also look at what purpose might be emerging from what once hurt you. So what once hurt me became to become a woman's network. It became the Empowered to Live podcast. It became me writing books. So all the things that I endured became things that I gave out to others and tried to make a difference and making an impact on the lives of other people. Recognizing that my voice was important, that my message of you don't have to be ashamed anymore. There is strength in your pain. There's purpose in your pain. Nothing that happened to you was an accident. And God can work it together for good, for your good and for His glory. He's going to work it some way. You're going to get there is a crown for you because of the fact that you endured these hardships like a good soldier, that God will provide for you, that He will make a way for you. So God doesn't waste pain. My song that I wrote years ago called "It's Not Wasted," and the lyric says that it's not wasted this life you've been given. It's not wasted every dream you have dreamed. It's not wasted every disappointment you have faced. That God is working it together for good. So it's not wasted, you know. So even though we walk through barren places and we feel like we're all alone, you know, that we are not alone. We are not alone. God is with us. And so our life is not wasted. He redeems it. And when you allow faith to move beyond belief and into action, even the hardest of seasons can become sacred ground. You are still called, you are still chosen, and your story still matters. So what is your story that you can give to the world? What are you sharing with the world? And so, this episode was a little bit longer than normal, but I just felt that it was important for us to recognize that, even in faith, as we put it in action, that there's purpose behind our pain. There's purpose behind the things that we experience. Somebody needs to hear your voice. They need to hear your story and just put off the shame, allow the sun to shine on the wounds that you have and let Him bring glory to Himself and a good for you. So thank you all for joining me on this evening. Like I said, when I finish here, I'm supposed to go getting a shot. I'm going to go do that. And then I am going to bed. And so I will keep you all updated on my journey as I walk through this period of time. But like I said, I'm sharing it with you all as an encouragement that yes, even in pain, you can still shine. You can still encourage, you can still motivate. So until next time, I want you to live empowered because God has given us everything we need to walk out this life and to live godly. So thank you all. Have a wonderful and blessed evening. Good night.